Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com, and this is part 8 of our Learn Lightroom 5 series, and today we're going to talk about split toning. Before I start though, I want to thank everyone for all the tremendous response the videos are getting. It's beyond my wildest dreams of how popular they've become. If you could do me a favor though, if you could click on the subscribe to my channel button, subscribe to the videos, I'd really appreciate it. Comment, and if you could like them and stuff like that, I really appreciate all that. Okay, what we're going to do is split toning, and I have to admit, I don't do much with split toning, and the main reason I don't is because I'm colorblind. I have a kind of a mild format, from what I understand, of color blindness. I see colors, but certain hues of colors I can't discern. So there could be just something to me could be yellow and it's really orange. It's a shade of yellow, or some shade of blue to me might start looking purple before it actually is purple. So you'll see in split toning, you kind of are you have to be able to see the color to know what you're picking, and I'm not as skilled at that as like when I use the HSL thing here. It tells me I'm doing, blue, orange, yellow. I know what I'm doing because I could read it. But anyway, let's get started. This picture here I took a few days ago. If you hit the I key on your keyboard, you come up with some information. You can see it's a NEF file, so I shot an icon. I took it just a few days ago, and it was 1/40th of a second at f11. If you read any things I've written, I usually shoot landscapes at f11. It's kind of the sweet spot at this Nikon lens I happen to use. Um, anyways, at first glance, the picture looks kind of crappy. I exposed for the highlights, although there's really not much detail in the sky, but we'll see what we could tease out. We're going to get to the split toning in a minute, but I thought we could just quickly go through how I would process a landscape photograph. So typically, I start with right here. I leave exposure and contrast alone usually because I usually got that right, or I shouldn't say contrast. I leave the exposure alone because I usually got that the way I wanted it in the camera. Temperature and tint I might mess with later. So I start out with the highlights, and I bring those all the way down and shadows all the way up. I got criticized for that by someone, well, lightly criticized. He thought that was ridiculous that I do that, but that's the way I do it. You could do that's why we all have our own copies of Lightroom, so we could do things our way. Otherwise, we just shoot JPEGs and let the camera come up with the image. But we choose to shoot in RAW, so we have more creative control over what we're doing. So I bring highlights all the way down, shadows all the way up. Next, I adjust the whites and the blacks. You hold the Alt or Option key down. When you click on the white, the entire screen will turn black. You tweak it up until you just start seeing some whites come into the picture, and then I back it off just a little bit. Blacks is similarly done, except you're going to go the opposite way. You hold the Alt or Option key down, you click down, now it turns white, and you're going to pull it back until you see some blacks come in. And usually I bring this a little further than the whites, meaning I'll have a little more black showing when I'm adjusting the black than the white I had showing when I adjusted the whites. Okay, doing that, it added a little more contrast to the picture. Next thing I do is I add some clarity. Usually, I add a fair amount. Some people add a lot more than I do generally, but around 30 is good enough for this one. I'll add a little vibrance. Again, I mentioned this in previous videos. The difference between vibrance and saturation is saturation increases the color intensity of every single color in the photograph. Vibrance increases the vibrance, or the color intensity of those colors that aren't already near saturation. So it brings out some of the more subtle tones. All right, I'm gonna go up to contrast and add just a little contrast. Okay. All right, that's that. That's all I do right now in the basic panel. I might come back to it later once I adjust other things. I'll find that I need to make it brighter or darker or something, but for now that's where I'll stay. I'm not going to do anything in the tone curve. Typically what I do is I jump to this HSL panel next, but I'm going to go to the split toning now. And it's divided up into two subsections. You have highlights and shadows, and what you're actually doing is you're adjusting the color for the highlights separately than you'd be adjusting the color for the shadows, and then you adjust the balance between the two, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Now you could just take this U slider, oops, didn't want to do that. You take this U slider and you could just slide her up and down to get a green tone, blue tone, whatever. Or you could just click this little box right here and you get a color picker. And you could come in, you could pick a color. Now I want my highlights, let me close this for a minute. The highlights are pretty much the sky here. I want the sky blue, so I'm going to pick a blue. Now to me this is, blue starts turning purple. So I'm going to pick a blue like in here somewhere. Now as you go left to right, it changes the color. As you go up and down, it changes the saturation or the darkness of the color. So this is a lighter blue, then that's that blue there. I don't know, you could just move it around to get the color you think you want to show. I want it kind of almost purple. Like right around there is good. Now this slider is the saturation. That's when you were going up and down on the the saturation. As you go up, you're bringing this slider to the right. As you go down, you're bringing the slider to the left. So it's, I don't know, I guess it's to my eye right here, it's a little bit too intense. So I'm going to just pull it down a little bit. Now for the shadows, which is predominantly in the foreground here, I just want it green. Simple as that. So pick some green right there. And the saturation in there somewhere, I guess. Okay, now the balance control. Now I could, this is kind of like how much of this is favored. So if I go to the right, I favor more highlights. So this blue spreads down into the green. If I go to the left, the green leaks up into the highlights. I like it the way it was. So if you double click on it, it puts it back to where it started, which is right in the middle. So to me, this split toning is done. I made the green greener. I made the blue a little bluer, almost in a purpley way, to my eyes at least. So you guys are probably looking at it thinking I'm a nut, but to my eyes, that's a blue heading towards purple. The next thing I'm going to do, only because it's bothering me as I look at it, there's a censored spot right there. So we're going to go to the this adjustment right here, which I covered. I've forgotten which part, one of the earlier parts, the spot removal tool. And so what you want to do is you use the left bracket key to make it smaller, the right bracket key to make the brush bigger, and you want to make the brush just a little bigger than the spot. And Lightroom picked me a spot over here. You could move it around by just grabbing it and moving it where you want it, and just hit enter and it's done. So okay, I got rid of that annoying spot. Next thing I want to do is I want to do well, typically I think I'd like to do some brush adjustments, but before I do that, I'm going to jump into this HSL. I can't not do this because I like this control, because as I mentioned, it tells me I'm adjusting orange and it tells me I'm adjusting green. So to someone with my eyes, it's easier to use. What I want to do is under the saturation, I want to bring the green and the blue up even a little more. So I go over here to the blue slider, and I'm going to just bring it up quite a bit in the 70s. And I think I'm going to do the same for green. Let's see what that looks like. I bring it up in the 70s a little bit. Okay, now the luminance part of it is where you make, how intense it is. And I'm going to bring green up. I want green lighter. So a little more almost radioactive. And we're going to bring the blue down, which is going to make the sky darker. So I'm going to bring it a little more, a little more. All right, right around there. And I'm done with that panel. So I made the blue a little more intense and darker, and the green a little more intense and lighter. Next thing I'd like to do is I go into my brush, and I'm going to brush and see you could see there's some color here that is in the raw file, and I'm going to bring out this color that's a contrasting color to the blue. I want to make this more orange. Now this is where my eyes sometimes deceive me, but usually I call over one of my sons or my wife, and they help me with the, that I'm actually painting on orange, not painting on, some weird color. So what you could do now is you hold the Alt or Option key down, and it changed this effect into reset, and you could reset these sliders by just clicking there. Also, you could just double click on effect. If you double click on it, all the sliders get reset. You could go into custom, and we're going to do a temp adjustment. It already pulled my temp there up to 20, whatever. I just want the temp here to be a little warmer, and I want the tint to be down a little bit, and I want to paint, as you can see. Also, you can make the brush smaller or larger by hitting those left and right bracket keys. So I'm going to paint in here, and that little bit of color is contrasting to the blue sky. Now what I could do now is I could close this brush down, and I could go back into my HSL panel, and I could go to the saturation of the orange, and I could bring orange up. And you could see, it affected the grass a little too, but it brought out the orange that I was trying to paint on, a little more saturated. And we could go to the luminance, and we could pull it down just a little bit, and it made this even more prominent, and that's what I was going for there. Now, to finish off the image, what I'd like to do is I also do this. To me, this foreground is kind of boring, and this is a little trick I do to add a little interest to something like this vast expanse of the photograph here that it is kind of all the same. Is you add a little texture by it's kind of like dodging and burning. You can see there's kind of a dark line here, there's dark line here, and there's a little darkness over here. What I do is I enhance that by using the brush. So we're going to reset this brush. We double click on the effect. It reset these sliders. We're going to do an exposure adjustment. We go to exposure. We're going to bring exposure down a little bit. We'll try it here. We could adjust it later, readjust it, I should say. I like the size of this brush already, so I don't know where my brush went. There it is. Okay, and we just could paint over the dark that's already dark. Now you don't see much happening now, but what we're going to do is I'm going to bring this. Now if I brought exposure way down, you could see what I did. Okay, but we're going to bring it down fairly significantly, almost a whole stop. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a new one, a new brush, by clicking on New right here. Double click Effect to reset. This time we're going to bring exposure up. I'm going to try it at around 0.58. And now I'm going to go around those dark areas by making things brighter, making a kind of a path in here, going across the photograph. And down in here. Now let's bring that up even a little more. Okay, you see now what I did. Now I'm going to turn the brushes off. It's going to turn off this color I painted on before too, but you'll see I want you to look at the grass, and what I did is It was kind of monotoned, and when I added the let's, for lack of a better term, let's call it dodging and burning, it added a little more interest and detail into the foreground by doing that. And that's all the brushing I would do now. And the next thing I do is probably jump down into lens corrections. I'm going to enable my profile corrections, which corrects for any distortion my lens produced in the photograph. Remove chromatic aberration. I don't have to worry about anything being tilted or offline, because there's really no strong verticals or any horizontal lines in this photograph. My next episode, in part 9, I'm going to talk about how you could correct perspective and lines in your photograph by utilizing this panel. So look for that in part 9. So next thing I do is I generally would add a vignette. But before we do that, I had a question about camera calibration. It's just something you look at. Somebody told me they didn't have all these down here, and that's probably because they shot in JPEG. These profile corrections that are in Lightroom are in the raw file, and you can choose like landscape. You could just see it adjusts the color. Look at it, made it way more intense. You could go to neutral. You just try these out and see different looks that the profile corrections, or the profile you're choosing, I shouldn't say corrections, just the profile you're choosing, and see if you like something better. Camera Vivid I usually like. Yeah, I kind of like Camera Vivid. It might have overdid this a little bit, and if I was actually doing this photograph for me to be printed or something, I'd go back into my brush and tone this down a little bit. Or I'd go into the HSL here, and I'd go to my orange here, and I'd bring orange down a little bit here, just a little bit. But anyways, that's what you could do too. And the final thing too is I usually put a vignette to draw everyone's interest towards the center of the photograph. Oh, what I forgot to do, I'm so tied up, is I forgot to sharpen and do noise reduction, because I could see some noise up in the sky. I have a whole episode on sharpening and noise reduction. I just checked some of the back videos. I think it might be part 5, but I don't remember, tell you the truth. But just look through my Lightroom training on YouTube and at my website, and you'll see it. Quick and dirty sharpening and noise reduction. Put this near 70, around 70, and put noise reduction around 40, and you're good to go. Then finally, what I do is the vignette, and I just usually use the dark vignette, and it helps pull the eye towards the center of the photograph. And that's it. That's how I use split toning. And to show you the before and after, you could hit the Y key, and this is the before, and this is what we end up now. You can see there's a dramatic difference. And one thing I got to add though, I started this process off in camera. I exposed for the highlights. It looks like I made a silhouette. But because I shot in RAW, all that information is in the RAW file, and I was able to tease it out with Lightroom. The other thing you could do is you could hit the backslash key, and when you hit the backslash key, it'll show you where you started. Hit the backslash key again, it shows you where you ended up. So that's it. That's our part 8 of our Learn Lightroom 5 video series, and I touched on split toning. Split toning is most powerful when you have something very bright, like let's say half of the picture is very bright and half of the picture is very dark, which is what we started out with here. I mean, I've seen people, I think Mark Wallace over at Arama has a thing where he uses it on some portraits. You should check out what he did. It's real interesting. And again, I apologize if I'm saying something's orange or blue and it's really purple or yellow or green or something like that. As I mentioned, I'm colorblind. But I seem to fake it pretty good. So don't let anyone know. Thanks. That's it. And I'd really appreciate you, again, if you guys could subscribe to my videos and like the videos and comment on the videos and come over to my website, anthonymorganti.com. I got all kinds of training. I try to put stuff up there every day, something new every day, articles and videos on photography. And again, thanks a lot for everyone's tremendous feedback. It's been unreal. I really appreciate it. And that's it for now. Take care.